It's a few minutes after, so let's get rolling. So we've got good morning and afternoon to everyone. Matt Simmons, President of SimTech here. This is our final point in time webinar for the 2026 point in time count. We have just over 2 weeks to go before the submission to HUD, the deadline. If you get it done sooner, that's great. You can you know, relax, I guess. Probably move on to the next thing, right? But yeah, let's make sure the data's tight and then all of what you put on in there is defensible. I mean, that's what we want. We want to make sure that you're confident in the figures and we can, um, really make any last minute refinements. Still have some time for that. And then we'll leave some time for questions and answers. But I want you all to understand how we derive our estimates using the data, and then what tools we have available at your disposal. So here we go. So you're all muted, and just use the chat, and then we can take you off mute if you want to. We can have an active dialogue at the end. Um, we're just trying to make sure that we don't get any odd disruptions during the webinar. And we will post all the recording to our webinars page. So this is what we're going to cover. I'm not going to read it all to you. You'll see it, but we're going to go front to back on really the final steps, which is where we are now. So hopefully most of you have been working on with your data. You know, there's not a lot you can do after the count's over, to be honest with you. There's refinements, but it's kind of like the 80-20 rule. So you've got 80% of the way there. You can make some adjustments. And we'll share what you can do and how to do it. But most of the data mass should already be there. So within the command center, if you go into the command center, there's a drop down under reports. If you there might only be one report there if you didn't use the vehicle makeshift shelter option. If you use both, you'll see both reports. So if you use the vehicle makeshift shelter, we have another report there that we can explain the details of. So when you click on HUD Pit Report, you'll see the bottom left is the prompt. It goes by unsheltered by default. Some communities also use counting us for their sheltered counts. And if you did that, you can choose sheltered, or you can use it over both. And I'll create a combined table show. It's up to you to, for data quality, you can just leave them blank because there's no extrapolation needed. You're just looking at the survey data that we have to work with before any extrapolation happens. And then if you wanted to drill down to a specific region, maybe you're working with a regional lead, you can do that too. If you're looking at the macro level for the entire continuum of care, and sometimes the continuum of care, there is only one region that you don't use the region and county management functionality, which allows you to break the count down into smaller, more bite-sized chunks, if you will. Then you don't worry about selecting a region there. Hit run report. It's going to spin for a little bit because it's going off all your survey data, and it's going to create a report output. And what that looks like is like this. So we've hidden the names intentionally because it's the demo. But really the key parts are you've got it looks like the HUD table shells. So when you go into HDX, when you scroll down, but the top part is really kind of a high level snapshot of how many people did we encounter, what's some of the age demographics, because the age demographics really tell us if it's going to be an adult or a child, and then the household composition. So is a household with adults and children, just adults, or just children? If there is no age present, and we try to force this for most of your setups, but it's optional. But if there is no age present, then that person could be an unknown age, and would have an unknown age if it's no date of birth, no age range, no age. And in that case, we wouldn't know if they're an adult or a child, and therefore we couldn't classify the household record. So hopefully you force it. But if for whatever reason your community decided not to do that, then you're gonna have some of these records to where there's no place to put them because there's no table shell for, adults with unknown partner or unknown extra person. In which case, you'll be able to clean up the data there so they do fall on a shelf. But all of these numbers are hyperlinks. And what they'll do is when you click on them, it's going to produce a list for that group. So I'll do it on my phone. Um, and so if you want to fix a certain piece, you want to work with that data, you click on the link, it's going to produce a list, and then you can open up each survey at a time. And sometimes you can go back to HMIS to clean things up. It's a little bit late to go back to the interviewers and say, hey, with this person, but that's something like closer to the count you could have done. But right now you definitely could use HMIS if you had enough data to do the match. So this is what the data quality check section looks at like. Gender and sex, it's really for local purposes this year. So some communities chose to keep gender just for backwards continuity. Some did collect sex, some collected both. So that's for local planning purposes, because there's no place for it in the HUD HDX this year. But that might come back. Sometimes it just, the pendulum can swing, right? But the person's missing relationship, the head of household, if that, this is oversample data, so there's a reason why it's like that. But that goes back to what I was saying. Typically, there's someone in the household that didn't have that information. Um, but yeah, gender, age information, all that you can clean that up here. For those of you that are already working with us as what we call all-in clients, all-in clients we have a SimTech, we've been doing this for 20 some odd years. It's actually, company was founded in 98. We started working on homelessness in 2002. But if you do use our full framework, that includes the Counting Us app, our Show the Way outreach app, and then also we have a data warehouse to bring data from your HMIS, as well as our two apps brings it together to have more of a comprehensive, cohesive view of what's happening across your community. But we also have more tools and reporting and analytics and dashboards and NOFO rating and ranking tools, things that communities that we worked with, in the last somewhat 20 plus years have said, we want this and we need this. We don't get it from HMIS. Can you do this for us? And we're software developers that care about homelessness. So yes, the answer is typically yes. Um, but one of the things that we can do with the warehouse is we can match the data from Counting Us, the survey records, with whatever you have in HMIS. And we can load years of data in. And if we get a hit, we can share the information back so you can do post count data cleanup. So if those of you aren't using the warehouse now, have interest, we can get it fired up. We use what's called the HUD CSV Exchange format. We happen to author the format, version 3 of it for HUD. And so it allows us to work with any software vendor because they all have to produce that. And so we ingest data in that format, ingest the data from Counting Us. We do a match. Um, we use typically we have different ways to run the matches, but last name and date of birth is a pretty good hit rate just there. And the other thing it allows us to do is to evaluate how comprehensive court entry really is. Um, Oftentimes, what we see is the court entry focuses on people that go to shelter, and that's not always the same population that we see during the point in time count. And you're oftentimes missing some of your most vulnerable in the community. So they might not have a VI SPDAT score, but they're omnipresent in emergency rooms, in the hospitals. They have severe needs. There might be a reason why they don't go to shelter. Sometimes it's because they have a pet, a partner, etc. So um, it's just worthy to evaluate your court entry process for that reason as well. So you're making sure you're taking care of your most vulnerable. So within the warehouse itself, there's also other benefits. For example, the shelter-based side of the count, it's the HIC and the PIT. So we have to do the point in time count for the shelters, but we also have to do a housing inventory chart. And one of the things that happens year over year is the housing inventory is as of the date of the point in time count. But in a true system, beds come on and offline. They should, right? But also the way the HUD data constructs it. So this number that's it's in green should adjust in reality. Yes, you have the point in time with the where the bed's on the point in time, but they should come on and offline. But you also have this arbitrary construct of enrollments that sometimes can skew the data because, especially for high turnover shelters, they tend to leave people enrolled because they might come back tomorrow and then they'll exit them eventually. And then what ends up happening is they'll have one massive exit, like, oh, we got to do some data cleanup. They'll do an exit and then they'll exit some records and there'll be some lingering ones from years ago. And then they'll do a massive enrollment. In this case, it looks like a seasonal shelter. But the beds went to zero, but the occupancy didn't. So there's a data quality issue, severe one here that's going to affect the pit report. And then over here, sure, you put the beds back, but you're double capacity. So should your beds be at 75 or should they be at 175? And so there's a few things going on here that we can evaluate with this case of capacity utilization over time uh, dashboard. And then below that, you also have your data completion rates. So these are the things that help it, they impact all reports, not just the point in time, but the LSA, your SPMs, as far as your overutilization here, this is all inflated by these records that need to go. There are probably some open exits from years ago. But that's part of like why we have a cohesive approach towards reviewing and analyzing the data, which requires a warehouse. And with that, talking about the comprehensive coverage, HMIS was designed originally for HUD as a reporting tool back to Congress and Office of Management Budget on how the money was being spent. It was never designed in 2004 as a care management platform. Part of the fall, like how it was orchestrated and done, what ended up happening, and this is before mobile tech was even a thing, which those data standards we're still adhering to. They haven't changed that much. They haven't evolved. We're missing a key part of our population. So West Coast communities down south in particular, we have a high unsheltered population. Here in California, it's over half. But our systems and our system performance measures ignore half of the population. So we built Mobile Tech, the sister app for counting us, GPS-enabled surveying, is Show the Way. There are other potentially softwares that might be coming along, but we've been doing this for over, this work again for over 20 years, but this work is Show the Way is over 10. And what it is, it's a care management platform that is HMIS compliant, but it's not an HMIS that we try to bolt on care management to. So it's an important shift because our North Star is helping people and getting reported as a byproduct. But these interactions that you have day to day and the service transactions that your outreach workers, first responders, and others have with people in the community with the location and the date and timestamp, that's huge because like, we can use that information to keep people active on a binding list, as well as know that we haven't seen them in a long time. So we can then therefore start to ignore them because maybe they've moved on away from our community or they've self-resolved, what have you. But the part of it is that the culmination of what you have in HMIS for most of your shelter work and what you can do with outreach, first responders, and others, and even allowing people to self-refer to services to keep them to say that you know where they are, encampment management tools, et cetera. Again, data constructs that don't exist in HMIS, safe parking, safe sleeping, so sanctioned encampments as well. We have data tools for that, so we don't lose the sight of who the people are. And by layering all this in, we have, for this year, this is our second year of having communities use just outreach apps, the outreach data, and not use the Counting S app because they have an actively curated by name list that starts from the Show the Way, goes into the warehouse, and follows programming specifications that we authored in partnership with Community Solutions to show the inflows and outflows in your community. And the last day of the reporting period is your point in time count. So point being is we need to evolve, and we have tools that can help you evolve too. Data cleanup resources for FAQs, we can drop them in. Everything's on our support page. So there's information there. And we can drop a link in the chat for that. So But these are some of the key FAQs that if you're digging in, you want to know. So you go to support and you go into there's FAQs for administrators. It's on the bottom because we're for most of this because you've already done the account planning and running the account. It's more the cleanup stage. So everything we do, we've got business rules. If you need the rules and like how did Simtech create this number and you can't find it on our website, reach out to us, pitt@simtechsolutions.com. So we go step by step by step to know that the inputs, what we do to create an estimate for the final. So that way, everything that you share is defensible as well. And then when you come back to us, like, hey Matt or hey Simtech team, where'd you get this number from? We can stand behind it and we can walk it through with you. So um, we want to make sure that you're comfortable, and that for us, it means we have to go through the laborious and process of creating program specifications that don't exist from HUD. HUD does have program specifications for the annual performance report, for example, and we actually authored those as well, version 3 for those as well. Um, so we know how to create them, but right now there's a void. So that we're still working off the 2024 Hick and Pitt notice. That's the closest we have to programming specifications. And so what it means is every single business rule is defined. So if you're using demographic extrapolation, we have something. We have our rules. Yes, HUD does have a tool for that, but it actually misses out on chronic population. It misses out on veterans. It doesn't extrapolate for those. It really focuses on key demographics, which right now, when you remove sex and gender, it's limited to age and race. So there's a place for it for chronic, but it doesn't even change the numbers for chronic. So that's a little interesting. So for those of you that use geographic sampling and enumeration, we have a methodology document that we curate for each of you. One of the things that I think makes us stand out is we have a PIT results file format that makes it easier for you to get the data back out. And if you're working with us, we take that data and we can create the dashboards and we create the reports off of that. It's much easier than rekeying information over and over again. So if HUD HDX, for example, had an import, you could potentially just upload it there. Uh, when we weren't really sure what the administration was going to be doing and if we were going to actually, we're still waiting for 2025 PIT results, which is embarrassing to say the least, of our federal government to hold back on those. And I have no problem just speaking openly of, sorry, sometimes I go a little too far, but that data is stale. And so a lot of your hard work is dying on the vine, if you will. But for us, we can make sure that sees the light of day. So one of the things I'm excited to share is we do have a results repo that Nathan has been working diligently on that we'll share in a minute. So demographic extrapolation. Uh, so instead of having you use HUD's tool, which is another Excel spreadsheet where you key in information and you see the extrapolated results. Because when you go to HCX, what's going to ask you is the sum of the parts need to equal the whole. So if you said there's 100 people that were in this table shell, so households without children, for example, then when you add up all the race responses and all the age range responses, it needs to total up to 100. But if, say, you only surveyed half the population and the other half were, observation tallies, you need to find a way to take what the data you did have to inform the data that you didn't collect. And so that's the baked-in extrapolation. So again, we have rules that. So you can see the actual counts. In this case, we're showing gender, which again, I know it's not part for HUD, but you might want it locally. Uh, we can derive estimates here off of, and then you show the response rates for the gender based on the data that was captured. All right, so that's that part. And any questions so far in the chat for Simtech team? I'm not monitoring the chat, but if there are, just take me off or just pause me anytime. Geographic sampling and enumeration. This is a tool, it's late in the game. Obviously you either used it or you didn't for this year, but just to make sure you're aware. If you have a large community, you're not able to canvass the whole thing. We have ways to infer results for the areas that you didn't cover using data from the areas you did. So again, we have specifications, we have, a methodology document that goes along with this, but I'm not going to spend too much time. But if you're a little low on surveyors, or you have a lot of area to cover, it's definitely worth considering for the future. And it's one of those things that actually is supported by HUD now. I mean, we originally created this model with Connecticut to do a statewide count, but now HUD has guidance that mirrors what our approach. RVs. So I'm sorry, this is for program specifications for the vehicle and makeshift shelter report. So if you did opt for that, we have specifications there as well. The short of it is we use this. There's a question, how many people are living in this vehicle type? So if you said your living situation during a survey, you interview the person and you say, where are you sleeping tonight? Or where did you sleep last night, depending on if it was a morning or night count. They give a response. If it's one of the vehicle and makeshift shelter types, it's a car, it's a boat, it's a van, it's an RV. We ask how many people were sleeping with you. And what we do is we create a local multiplier based off all of those survey responses. And then for the vehicle and makeshift shelter tally, we're going to quantify how many times you saw, an RV that looks occupied, but you couldn't engage the people. And then for all those RVs, we're gonna create we're gonna use the local multiplier. So there's 10 RVs and an average of 18.8 people. That's going to turn into 18 people. And then we can also apply the geographic sampling enumeration as well to that if the region opted for both. Again, specifications exist if you want to dig in deeper. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this unless people have questions, but the point of it is that RVs, there's gradients. Some are meant for habitation. Some are in, um, have hookups. If you're at a campsite, that's not the same thing as being literally homeless in HUD's eyes. So the HUD has some guidance. So you have some control over which RVs are being included and which are not. Yeah, but it's actually worth unpacking, especially on some of the West Coast communities we work with. This gradient, what we're seeing, and just to share with the group, we're seeing vehicle residency as a new game in town, a new flavor of homelessness. We're seeing a lot of people, and we're digging in deeper. Right now, Santa Barbara is one of our communities. We're doing a vehicle residency study with them, and and some of the other data we're seeing is related to employment. We're seeing employed people and families living in RVs, but truly homeless in the sense that they have no stable residency. So it's it may be worth evaluating, especially if you're considering safe parking locations, if you're looking at what kind of support you have in the community for that population. Some of the larger employers, we actually see them as hotspots on the map when we look at. It's all GPS enabled data. We can filter it out, and we can see that some of these RVs are right next to some major employers. I'm not going to name names, but um, it's worthwhile because then maybe there's also an appetite to go back to the employer and say, either start paying a living wage or maybe thinking about workforce housing because these people are ending up on our streets. So one of the tools that we have, because there's so many layers and permutations to what's done, we use the results file format, which is it's basically for those who do the APR and have to upload your results to Sage. The way it works, that tool is every question on the APR, and it has a corresponding number. So if there's 15 female veterans, there's a 15. You're not passing, the data of the 15 female veterans. It's literally just a results string. So we have a result string that, in a format that allows us per project type, and per table shell to have a corresponding field. And so it's a very wide table, and our different tools so can produce data in this format. And the benefit of it is at the end of the day, you may have data coming from different places for your point in time count. Most of you do. Where it's HMIS is one data set. Sometimes you have domestic violence providers that are using something different. We've got obviously data from Counting Us that goes through the command center. For those of you who show the way, you've got that data that comes through. Um, so we can use the warehouse for the show the way data. We can use the warehouse for HMIS data to produce the results file format. And then from Counting Us, we produce it natively within the command center. And the beauty of all that, and then the other piece is we have the PIT results manager. So the work that Nathan did, we used to have an Excel-based tool. But the problem with Excel, I love Excel. I mean, I'm a finance guy, and that's kind of like where I got started, a lot of this. The APR generation tool, for example, that we licensed to HUD, all Excel. Excel is powerful, but the problem with it is a lot of it is like saving something off, moving a file, copying, pasting. Even if all the formulas are completely nailed down, it's just an extra step. But the other part of it too is year over year, we want to start doing sub-regional, like so within a bigger community, Alameda, San Francisco, San Mateo, some of these, we work with some large communities. There's more of an appetite locally to say, we want to know what's happening within our city, not the count. That's continuum care is great. We're part of it and we want to support that. But my mayor, X, wants to know, is homelessness rising or declining? How are we doing it with, the providers? You know, is there upward trends due to enforcement activities in our neighboring towns? Is that it's contributing to homelessness here? They just put a shelter in over, down the street. Is that increasing homelessness on the streets because they're drawing people in? There's a lot of questions that can be answered by having the ability to look at data at different levels. So one of the other tools, the benefits of it is you can run the results sub-regionally and start saving them year over year. So just like what HUD had originally intended with, being able to publish the point in time data, we've normalized all the data from 2007 forward to 2024 that HUD's made available, meaning we put it in this results file format. So historically, we can bring all that in, layer on the 2025 data that hasn't been published yet, layer on the 2026 data, and then be able to produce trend lines at a COC level. But then if we start doing it at the jurisdiction level as well, then you can have within your communities, really need three data points, 3 years to make a trend, ideally. Two is like, it's just a line this way or this way or this way. Um, but you can start seeing patterns. And you can start seeing not just at the high level trends, but within the demographic characteristics, et cetera. So the URL for the data repo is there. We can spend a little time on that. I think we do have some dive up my phone. Um, so yeah, I don't know if Nathan, if you wanted to share with that, or if you want me to share, it doesn't matter.
Hey, sorry, Matt, I was on mute. But yeah, if you want to share it, that might be a good idea because I think my Mac's gonna make me reboot if I try to share
Okay,
on Zoom. Sorry.
let's not do that. All right. So here's a new repo. Let me just hit here. And so really the part that's tied into that is on the data entry side. So what you're going to see here is a kind of a snapshot, and we're going to be adding to this. This is, really the focus for this year is going to be on the data entry piece. So, and I don't know if this, get rid of that. All right, so you get a data entry piece, and you also have the ability to import and export data. But for those of you that want data in that results file format so we can work with it, It's going to ask for your contact information. And then this, well, in the development world, we call this meta information. Basically, it's data about your data. So this is information that's going to tell us, okay, what state are you from? Okay, I'm in California. What's COC? And am I submitting this for everything? Am I submitting for a project type, for a subregion, et cetera? And then from there, this should look very familiar to the HUD table shells. I mean, again, we are capturing sex and gender, but it allows you to get the data in that format if you're providing another data source. And where all this goes, and let me just, this is like, again, I love Excel, but part of the reason why I love Excel is I can go front to back and show all the formulas and show the business rules, and you can see the formulas. So this is a sample. I've cleared out, some of the continuum of care, but in this case, to click on a button, if you once you have that data, it lets you choose to export it. So you're going to create a folder on your computer. You export the results files that you post in. If you hit import results, you browse for that folder. It's going to bring all of your data in, and it's going to populate all these table shells. And then we also have an all tab to go across table shells because that's one thing that people are like, well, what's our overall number? The overall number doesn't exist on that point in time report. You actually have to go and be like, oh, it's this number from this category and this category and this category, and then do the same thing for this table shell and this table shell. So the all tab is for your own purposes, so you can have the total number of people, which is will end up showing here. So, and then within on the report admin screen too, you can choose, are you going to include vehicle estimates? So if you did the VMS report, the vehicle makeshift shelter report, we have a results file format for that as well. And there's weighting factors that apply. Unsheltered observations, so you have the observation tallies, demographic characteristics again. If you have other data sources that didn't come from the command center, then they might not have demographic extrapolation applied. So you can do that here. But then again, what I was touching on earlier, HUD doesn't extrapolate for chronic in their extrapolation tool. They don't extrapolate for veteran status. They don't extrapolate for subpopulations. So hypothetically, say your survey rate was 50%. All right. So conducted those surveys, and of that 50%, you found out. So you had 200. Let's just do the math this way. You had 100 surveys plus observations, right? So 50 were surveys. So of those 50, let's say it was tw it was 12 people had severe mental illness. All right. It's not 12% though, because you have to account for the 50% that were observation tallies. If you just use the HUD tool verbatim and you didn't double that, then you're miscounting. So this tool allows you to make sure you're extrapolating for your chronic. If you need to, chronic is definitely um, it tends to look inflated because just to share in the group. So oftentimes we recommend not extrapolating for chronic and actually potentially reviewing local data to inform things. Partially because there's so many questions that could be missing that are part of the chronic calculation. So it's the age, they have to be an adult, and then it's all the homeless criteria. So had they been homeless for more than 3 years with 4 episodes of homeless, or homeless for more than 1 year, and then the presence of a disabling condition, but also the presence of that long and indefinite qualifier that goes along with the disabling condition. So there's a fair amount there. So if any of those are blank, it can cause the chronic flag to say the questions aren't answered, and then the multiplier will be applied. So just it's something if you ever do it, if you want questions, you want to talk about it, we can spend more time on that. But just sharing it. Oftentimes you can run it with or without, and you'll see how the numbers might spike if the data capture wasn't complete. So, but afterwards, you apply this. The other part is export results as CSV. This takes the post business rules applied from the data ingredients you fed into it, and it creates the final reporting figures that for internally we publish to Tableau is our tool of choice for dashboarding, but we also use it for our formal pit reports. But that's a snapshot that you can have locally to say, this is what we did. These are the business rules we applied, and this is the final estimates. And that will be what gets displayed here. I know it's a lot. And it's like, how can Excel? So there's some macros involved. So, if you're interested in this tool, you want access to it, just email our help desk. We'll get it to you. And then we can provide support and guidance. So you do need to enable the macros, because it's this Visual Basic code behind the scenes to do the imports and exports. I'm just gonna turn that off. But yeah, that's that piece. Any questions in the chat? Okay. Well, if not, I will go back to this slide. So yeah, this what I just shared you. I just gave you a live example instead of showing this. Uh, so in that import results feature at the end, if you're doing dashboards, we have several of your communities. We're already working day to day on your results. But if you have dashboards that you signed on for, or the point in time reports, we're gonna want that data in that format. Is basically what it comes down to, because that makes it so we can then use the existing dashboards and analytics tools to um, to create local results. So these are some examples and screenshots of what the dashboards look like. Um, you know, again, all is a lot of hard work that's gone into this. It's not just for HUD. And if you wait for HUD to get the data back out, you're going to be waiting a while. It's already April 14th for account. You know, the 2025 was done in January of 2025. So, we're talking 15 months later. That's not normal, but still, even a couple of years before, it was still 10 months. So this is more of a zoomed in look of, you're seeing overall trends. Again, we normalized the data all the way going back to the point in time became a national effort in 2007. We normalize the data going all the way back into that results file format. And then you can choose if you only want to see the last 5 years, et cetera. So you don't have to go that far back. But then within there, you can start seeing the breakdowns between unsheltered and sheltered, per each of the main target populations. Then you have demographic snapshots. And then, for some of you that there's an option to do sub-regional reporting. And for some of you, we're doing that as well. So it's by jurisdiction as well. Shared the tool already. So for those of you that are all-in clients and using the warehouse, if you want to get your shelter data, you can just give us the data in HMS. We can run your pit reports, generate the format, get it out. Otherwise, you can use that tool that I just shared. Shared that already. So submitting the results to HDX, that really is the final gut check. Um, do we want to make sure it passes all the validations? So there's going to be the results themselves. Do the sum of the parts equal the whole, like I talked about with race and age ranges? And so you want to get through that process and see if there's any error flags. If you find something that seems off with the reports that come from SimTech, like this number didn't add up, what have you, let us know. I will share, and we have an FAQ on this as well, that there is often just plain old math that causes problems, and it typically is related to rounding. And so when we so let me just, I use this analogy pretty commonly because it just helps explain things. If I had to split three people evenly into, two groups, so half are male and half are female, for example. All right. That's 1.5 for male, 1.5 for female. I go to round both because I can't submit 1.5. 1.5 is now 2. 1.5 is now 2. I just turned three people into four people. And so that's an example, but it happens throughout all this, especially in another layer deeper, we go sub-regional, because then it's like your smaller decimals. Point being is there might be some local adjustments you have to make. Typically on our end, we recommend creating an adjustment figure. So if it's off by one, using the one that's the biggest number in the set, the max of the range. So if it's predominantly a particular race or a certain age range, use that one, the largest, in adjusting there because it's kind of the smallest percentage change for that pop for that small for that group. So if it's whatever the age range is, that one's at max. It's 200. You have to change it to 199. Tiny percentage change, and half a percent, versus doing one of the smaller groups. All right. So we've gotten this far with the point in time count. We're not done yet. We do want your feedback. We want to know what we're doing well. That's great too. We don't mind some praise for good things. We also want to know what we can fix. If it's things that you wish we did better, if there's additional supports that are needed, different tools, different training. You wish the app did something that it didn't do, or does something you don't want it to do. We would really appreciate just knowing what we can do better. That's how we've grown. That's how we, keep getting, having impact. So by all means, if you have the time and don't mind sharing your feedback, you can also just call me, if you want. And my phone number is in my signature. You can send me a text. You can send us an email. So whatever is going to work for you, we just want to know what we can be doing better, and we really appreciate you all inviting us to support your work. It's been a long journey. We still have a lot of work to do. That's the nature of what we're all in. We're all in this space, and we still have people we need to help. So whatever we can do to help you help them, count us in. So without, taking it a step further, please keep us in mind for other tools. If you like what you saw with a point in time count and with counting us in the command center, just know that, you know, this is what we do. We're a mission-driven for-profit. We will work with your budgets, within reason. We don't charge giant implementation costs. If it doesn't work, we've done $1 trials or no cost trials. Um, because if we don't feel right taking money if it's not delivering impact. And so it needs to be worthwhile. So just know that we have those options out there. But again, we have mobile tech for outreach. It's a gaping hole in our response framework. We have the data analytics, the performance outcomes, the NOFO rating and ranking tools, which are coming up soon. When we say that you can inject, basically the NOFO rating and ranking tool is worth noting. We can run hundreds, if not thousands, of APR reports, and then use local scoring criterion that you can help establish. But we have a template, so you can run it off of the one that's based off of. HUD had one done in Excel. We took some of those business rules, we made it even better in some of our intensive work with some of our marquee clients, Houston, Kansas City, Toledo, is New Bedford, there's a gamut. Some of you on this call, and we make it better and better. But the whole idea is it's not just about the NOFO, it's ongoing performance evaluation. How is this provider doing compared to this other provider when it comes to things that we care about in our community? What are those things? Well, we have performance measurement categories. So is it returns to homelessness? Is it length of time homeless? Is it what's the outcomes of this provider compared to this other provider? So it's a full objective, uh, you know, review. And then to go along with that, we have public-facing dashboards that can be used to show the providers the results of their APRs visually, just like Stella is intended to do for the LSA, but it's behind lock key. It's a pain to get to and all of that process. We can run thousands of APRs because we can run them just by target population, just by, for veteran status by race. So you can do your racial disparity analysis, which we still believe matters. We can do all of that work, and you can have a lens into your data at different ways, and we're not exposing client level data in the process. And everything's backed by the APR programming specifications. So if there's any questions, we can go front to back, just like we do with the point in time count, to say, this is why we believe you should get funded, and this is why we believe you need help, or you're not going to get funded in the future. So you can then reinvest community dollars to the high performers and then help out, try to help out the low performers. But as a point, you're below the funding line. And according to these metrics, we have to invest elsewhere because you're just not cutting mustard or whatever expression you want to put there. By name list, same deal. We have the tools in the warehouse for that. You don't need coordinate entry projects to do double data entry and enroll people into this arbitrary construct. That was something that was created as a construct, years ago. But really, we need coordinated care frameworks. We don't need coordinated entry to be in a wait list for PSH that doesn't exist in your community, or it's very limited. We need coordinated care frameworks that you can actively work by name lists and match people up to resources, not just housing, that's available to them. Let the community stakeholders review the list, work down the list, and show the progress over time. And it's a view into your existing data, not another data construct with double data entry. More resources are here, and that's it. So, anytime we do have time for questions, and just know that we're here to support you. Do we have any questions that come through the chat?
No, nothing coming in, Matt.
So, while I'm waiting for questions to come in, just show this, an example of the warehouse. So you can see that. These are the, geospatially generated data sets. Um, the advantage of those in the by name list is then what you can do is you can actually see the data within a subregion within your community. So you're trying to stand up new housing in part of your community. All right. Um, you're getting some NIMBYs say, we don't have homelessness here. You can actually use the data to say, actually, in this census tract, you can go down to that level, not even just like this continuum of care. You have X. So yeah, you do have a need for that. But without selecting any community's warehouse, the inflows and outflows, this is, the point in time is a snapshot, and it gets knocked all the time. Um, but it's a snapshot that's needed because we don't have unsheltered data capture. So if you can get to the longitudinal view where you can actually trust the data and you can have inflows and outflows and be able to send the results to a dashboard, with a defined business rules for every single, this is who we already had for this month. Here's the new people. Here's the people that returned to active. Again, applying automated data scrubbing rules to your data. And then we keep people active on the list by having really strong service transaction history. You make sure we capture those interactions. Who do we move to housing? Who move to other places? And then this is the remainder is that's our point in time count for the month. It's the last day of the month. This is our count. If you have a good list to work off of. So I'm just sharing how it all works. And then, again, we set up a data source for your community. We use the HUD CSV formats. And then from there, we can do all of the HUD reports. We can do the performance analytics. Um, but we can do them geospatially, which matters. So just to kind of show what other layers we have for those who are interested. But if we don't have any other questions, you know how to reach us, and we appreciate you joining today. Um, I would recommend giving yourself at least a week buffer to get the data into HUD HDX, just in case you have any tweaks that need to be made, because you don't want to be stuck against the deadline when it tends to be higher traffic and sometimes it goes slow. But otherwise, thank you again for inviting us to support your work. We wish you all the best and hopefully see some of you again next year. And for those of you who do counts every 2 years, and we'll see you in a couple of years. But maybe we'll see you at some national conferences but feel free to reach out anytime. And thank you.